I should rush ahead and introduce our next speaker, Associate Professor in the Department of Psychology, Dr. Jason Leboe. Dr. Leboe completed his undergraduate degrees at Simon Fraser University and then went to McMaster University to earn his PhD. He's received over $430,000 in research funding and has received numerous awards recognizing his great ability to teach and conduct top-notch research. His presentation today is titled Origins of Remembering and Forgetting. Please welcome Dr. Jason Leboe.
Thanks a lot, Peter. I'm afraid I don't have any doomsday scenarios for you, so I hope you can still maintain attention. Dr. Wang did such a good job. There's no way I'm going to try to compete with the doomsday scenarios for the future. But one thing about memory, it really lies at the heart of all other issues that you can imagine. And that's one of the things that if you forget, and you probably will, you're going to forget almost everything I say. Well, if you remember anything at all, consider that memory is really at the core of all other issues that you can imagine, just because we as humans depend on the experiences that we accumulate and allowing us to be able to make decisions properly, to be able to solve problems, meet the challenges that we're going to face over the next 25 years. Lots of people have their own notions about what memory is. You have preconceived notions walking into this room about what it is. Let me be clear. Memory is who we all are at any one moment in time. Because there's no other way to define a person than in terms of the experiences that they've had throughout their life. What's memory's job? Memory's job is to create a record for all of the experiences that you've had in your life. And you can then use those experiences to know what to do in the future and in the different challenges that you face any moment that occurs after the events of your life to this point. So memory stores all of your experiences. Memory, because it's the storehouse for all of the learning that we've done, all of the things that have happened to us, it really lies at the core of all other aspects of human psychology and all other abilities for us to meet any challenges that we face. So I've got a collection of important abilities that a person can acquire and develop throughout life. Creativity, overcoming distraction, being good at learning, ethics, coping with stress and change. All of these things at the very root depend on memory. They depend on how well your experiences have prepared you to meet the challenges that you face right now. So that's why memory is important. And as I go through, I can't possibly tell you all of the things about memory that you should probably know in order to use your own memory with the highest amount of effectiveness. But I can give you little hints. I can just, painting broad strokes, give you some clues about how to go about learning and how to be better at remembering the things that you want to remember for the future. It's two basic principles. What causes us to forget? The thing that causes us to forget is that a lot of the experiences that we have in life, they're similar with one another. They end up in memory. They overlap in their features. So why do you forget so much of what happens throughout the day, throughout the year? Well, lots of the same types of things happen, and all of the similarities between events cause interference. Well, since that's the thing that causes forgetting, now we know what we can do to make any event that occurs to us memorable, so that we can bring the details to mind in the future. The opposite of interference from similarity is distinctiveness, the uniqueness of the information that you're learning in the moment. The uniqueness of an event that occurs to you now determines whether or not you're going to remember it later. So I can give you an example. Consider the issue of forgetting. The kinds of things we're going to forget most often are the things that repeat throughout life over and over again. Where the heck did I put my keys? I always losing my keys. The reason is because you have so many experiences of putting your keys down in different places. How do you have any hope of remembering where you put them the last time you put them down? Did I take my medicine today? Lots of people they have to take medicine every day. Hard to remember, did I take it today? Well, it's really hard to bring to mind whether you took it today. If you've taken it every day, maybe twice a day, for a long period of time, all of those experiences are similar. They all sort of blend in with one another. It's hard to remember any one of them. So you might easily make the mistake thinking that you took your medicine today when you didn't. That's a health problem, possibly. Or thinking that you haven't taken them today and you take it twice, equally problematic for your health. Think about where you parked your car. Good luck, folks, when you go out to the parking lot. Good luck. We park our cars a lot. There's nothing really special about the experience. There's all sorts of opportunity to forget that just because of all this interference between similar types of events like that. But then contrast that with the type of event that you're never going to forget. So it's watching the opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics, and the roof of a Bird's Nest Stadium blew off by fireworks. And I'll never forget it, because it's one of the most shocking things I've ever seen. Bizarre and amazing. Never forget it, right? That's the kind of scene you remember. You can think about less positive, more negative types of experiences that have happened to a person. You never forget those either. I was sitting watching the terrorist attacks on 9/11, planes crashing into huge buildings, buildings falling. It's not images you're going to forget anytime soon. Memory works best when the event that occurs and that's being recorded in memory stands out from the rest of the experiences that you've had in your life. It's not only memorability that's influenced by this distinctiveness factor, though. It's also change and behavior. This is a scene that causes great anxiety for me. The fear is building up. Oh, this organism freaks me out. I can't stand it. The only reason I can stay in the room is because it's two-dimensional. If I was a three-dimensional thing, I'd be running out the door. I don't care if I have to do a talk, I'm out of here. And the reason, I think, is because of an event that I'll never forget. When I was about 8 years old, I went outside, and oh no, my cat's attacking a mouse. Oh no! I like to save living creatures. I'm an 8-year-old. I've now learned never to get in between a cat and a mouse. But here I go, my 8-year-old self tries to get the cat away, picks up the mouse. If you ever pick up a mouse that's been playing with a cat, think twice, because it's disgusting, really. Mouse guts all over my hand, I realized. And the mouse bit me really hard, and so I tossed it. And you just never forget an experience that you're trying to save a mouse. It ends up dying, basically, in your hand, and then biting you for all the effort that you've put into trying to save it. So there's so much anxiety and negative emotion wrapped up in this experience for me that anytime I see a mouse, which, by the way, I have 3 cats, and I live out in the countryside, and I see mice all the time. My cats use them as squeaky toys. They'll toss them around the yard. Squeak, squeak, squeak. And here I have to deal with all of my phobia for mice. Okay? I will run, I will hide behind things. Distinctive events that occur to a person, you never forget them to the extent that they're unusual, but also they're the kind of events that radically change a person's behavior. They change the way the person interacts with the environment. People that witnessed 9/11 maybe still have changed the habits that they had before they witnessed those events. Maybe they don't travel by train as often. Maybe they're really nervous around strangers, or if they're in an unfamiliar setting. But the people that witness that kind of event, it changes them forever in some cases. Just like me in this mouse experience. Now, you can demonstrate this kind of thing in the laboratory, and this gives us another clue about how to make memory better and work for us. Because we walk around and stuff happens to us. Some of it's weird and we remember it. Some of it's just normal and we don't probably remember it for very long. All right. But what if there's something that you want to remember? Because you have to do well on a test, Or you're trying to get good at a skill so you can get a job and be good at the job and so you can get promoted and make more money. What if that's your goal? Well, you can use this same process of distinctiveness to your advantage. Because it's not only the distinctiveness of events that happen to us, it's what we do to the events that happen to us that make them distinctive. Something in a textbook isn't distinctive unless you do something to it, unless you think about it really hard and in the most deep and meaningful way possible. And I could demonstrate this basic influence on memory in the laboratory really easily. And this gives me an opportunity to give you an idea of what kind of process is involved in a memory experiment. Practically 90% of the memory experiments anybody's ever done follow this basic structure. You start with a study phase, and generally you can give them pictures, you can give them sounds if you want, people speaking. I generally show words on a computer screen. You can present a sequence of words on a computer screen. You tell the person, hey, look at these words, I'm going to test your memory for them later. And then in a later phase, you test them, and then you measure how many of the words that they studied that they can remember during the test phase. So it's a pretty simple procedure, and as I said, almost all memory experiments consist of this basic structure. Because we use the words in this kind of experiment apparently I can't use words properly either. We use words as a surrogate for events that occur out in the world. We all have experiences, some we remember, some we don't. How do you do that in the laboratory? Get control over the memory processes? You just present words and treat them as though they're events. Did you remember this event happening? Another way of saying that, do you remember this word being presented? Okay, measure that. See what kinds of things lead people to remember events better than other events. Okay? So what determines whether a word will be remembered better later? Here's a really neat thing you can do. You can present some words intact, which we call like a read condition. It's a word, you just read it. Garage, read it. Everybody can do this, it's easy. But you pick another set of words and you present them just a bit differently. You present them as what we call anagrams, scrambled words. Maybe somebody can decipher the one. Anybody? No? Orange. It's pretty easy. People vary on how good they are at solving anagrams, of course. And it's not that much harder than reading. But then when you test people's memory for the words later, the advantage is huge. So just unscrambling the letters of a word more than doubles your likelihood of remembering it later than if you just read it. So on that y-axis, on the vertical axis, that's just your likelihood of recalling a word during the test. The red bar is if you just read the word, you're not great. The blue bar is if you solved an anagram for a word, much better. There's a clue in there. And the clue is the more actively you think about something, the more complex the mental process that you do, the more likely you'll be able to remember something in the future. You can apply this to textbook learning. You can apply this to learning skills of golf or basketball. It's just a law of nature that you can apply across all contexts to maximize learning. The richer your mental experience of an event is, some information that you want to remember, the more likely you'll remember it later. So this is good stuff if you're interested in the learning process. As I said when I was talking about the roof blowing off Bird's Nest Stadium in Beijing, unforgettable, unbelievable. I'll never forget watching that happen. I'll never forget watching this happen live on television either. Of course, remembering has sometimes as much of a negative impact as forgetting. Fear gets provoked by this type of experience. Fear of air travel, as I said, fear of others, people that look like the people that were responsible for this type of event. Lots of negative consequences occur as a result of remembering. There's no doubt about it. A traumatic experience can be something that somebody never overcomes. So it's not all rosy as far as remembering goes. Remembering is good in some contexts and bad in others. But here's something else. So this is my second major theme I want people to remember, if possible. It's the second major issue. It's bad enough to remember something so traumatic and not be able to forget it that actually happened. It can be quite damaging as well to remember an event as having happened that never did, right? Or never did in quite the way you think it did. For decades now, we've understood that the police lineup situation can be a complete disaster if you want to actually convict somebody that actually committed the crime. People in a police lineup situation will remember somebody having committed a crime that had nothing to do with it. For example, somebody that stands out, like this poor guy, the guy with the cell phone. He is the oddball. Odd people are quite happy to identify the oddball as the person that committed the crime, even when they didn't really have anything to do with it. I like this one. There is no oddball here. Who do you pick? It's kind of random. People get in a lineup situation and they often seek somebody that looks most like the person that they saw committed the crime. Well, what if police accidentally nabbed somebody that just happened to look like the person that committed the crime? The witness could be quite confident at identifying them as the criminal, and off they go to jail, and it's not like this hasn't happened before. Off they go to jail, an innocent person. Okay? So misremembering, processes of remembering can be as frustrating and as damaging as processes of forgetting. Forgetting's annoying. Remembering can be even worse in some situations. So I'm just going to demonstrate a remembering process. I'm going to give you one of my memory tests, and we'll see how you do. You're quite free to write down. Don't write them down as I show them. That's cheating, okay? I'm going to show you the words, and then I'm going to test you. Informal. This is going to be very informal. So don't worry, I won't grade you or anything. Promise. So I'm just going to flip by a set of words, and you just pay attention. You just try to think. You just maybe try to apply the ideas I've been talking about. Try to make these words distinctive in your mind so that you can recall them later. Okay, so that's my list. Now just, you just saw the list. You can just you can write down as many as you want if you like, or you can just think of them, just generate them in your mind, whatever you want to do. This is not my water. Memory tests. If you can't write anything down after a minute, you're done. There's nothing else coming out of your memory. All right. I can't let this go on forever, okay? So I'm going to move on to the next list. We're going to do this a few times, okay? So get ready. Here comes another list. This is better at making you do all the work now. All right, I'm going to just do one more list. Just one more. I know how much fun you guys are having, so. So get ready. Okay, so obviously I can't check whether how many words everybody was able to write down, but I do have a test, and I'll do it with hands. Okay, so just if you remember having seen these words in the list, or for those of you who actually wrote them down, you can maybe just raise your hand if you wrote it down. Well, let's say raise your hand if you remember having seen these words on the list, or not. Don't raise your hand if you don't remember. You get it? Am I overcomplicating things? Just a little bit. Okay, so just raise your hand if you saw the word hatred on that first list. Great. You guys have pretty good functioning memories to say that. Anger. Anybody remember seeing the word anger on the list? Good. Good. Happy. Anybody? Anger, happy. More people remember happy than anger or hatred. What's neat about this is that anger wasn't presented at all on the list. So if you remember, haven't seen it. Hallucination, right? Let's try again. Let's see. We'll do better the next time, right? Do better in the next list. So hands. Do you see the word sweet in the list? Anybody? Sweet, sweet. Taste, how about taste? See? About the same amount saw the words sweet and taste in the list. Soda? Bit of an advantage for soda, I'd say, with hands raised. Which one wasn't on the list? Sweet wasn't on the list. Okay. Okay, list 3. I. How many people saw I? Good. Great. Maybe, did you? Did you not see it? Needle? Yeah, definitely. Thorn? One of those 3 was not on the list. Needle wasn't on the list. Tricked you again. I know the tricks. I can mess with your memory. I can stick stuff in there that wasn't in there before. Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you think that's not impressive? Big deal. I can have you remember a word that's on the that wasn't actually on a list when I just show you a bunch of words that are related to the one I didn't show? Consider this. If I brought participants into my laboratory and I said, you know, participant, we have all these stories from your parents about things that happened in your childhood. and you actually get stories from your parents, like 4 of them. And then you tell the participant, so do you remember this and this that your parents said actually happened to you? And then we just slip one in that we know never happened to you. Like you went up in a hot air balloon ride when you were 6. Remember that? Your parents told us you did this. Do you remember this? By the way, we just happen to have a photo of you in a hot air balloon. Bam! Age 6, you in a hot air balloon. What's the percentage of people that think that they went up in a hot air balloon at age 6 after you give them a few days to think about it? 80%. 80%. I can slip anything I want into your minds, people. Do they pay me? I can make your childhood so fun, you won't even believe it. I'm going to show you, just because I was asked to show some of the laboratory procedures that we use to mess with people's minds as far as their memory goes. Here's an experiment that I did just for fun, just to demonstrate that people's memory, when they're thinking about the past, what you remember isn't what happened. It's your best guess as to what happened based on whatever's going on in your mind right now. You can't blame a person for looking at a photo of themselves age 6 in a hot air balloon and then thinking about what that would be like and then turning that all into a real memory, something that they really think happened to them. Well, in this case, I messed with people in a bit of a different way. I constructed a bunch of words that either were consistent or inconsistent with one punctuation or the other. Exclamation points or question marks. So you could get a word like tired, which, are you tired? People ask, tired? Are you tired? Right? It's more associated with question mark. People don't go around saying, tired, I'm tired. Right? They're not excited. It's not an exclamation for tired. Horrible? That's horrible. Not, that's horrible? That's not very common. So we have people study these 2 different types of words, the ones that normally go with question marks and the ones that normally go with exclamation marks. Half the ones that normally go with question marks, we actually have people look at them and they're paired with question marks, and then the other half are paired with the opposite, and then do the reverse for the exclamation mark words. And just because just for fun, I actually had people pronounce them, these words, in the way they were punctuated. So I could hear from outside the room people going, horrible, and available, and stuff like that. This is very fun for me. And now a simple test, you get all these words again, and your job as the person in the experiment is just to say, was this word paired with punctuation exclamation marks before or question marks before? And you find that really what actually happened earlier in the experiment, the actual punctuation for the word before, has very little influence on the judgment people make. That if you look at their accuracy for judging the right punctuation, it almost entirely depends on whether the punctuation they think was paired with that word is consistent with their normal way of experiencing the word. So that people will quite often, even if they saw horrible with question marks, they'll quite often think that they thought they saw it with exclamation marks before. Because what are you supposed to do as a person in this experiment? You see the word horrible? Your whole life says to you, there should be exclamation marks after that. And so that's what you think you saw. And that's what happens in this experiment. So these are just bars of accuracy. So as you go up the vertical axis, how accurate are people in making this punctuation decision? And that people are most accurate, whether they studied these words with question mark punctuation or with the exclamation mark punctuation, they're most accurate when the punctuation just happened to match the way you typically encounter these words in life. What you remember isn't what happened. It's your best guess as to what probably happened based on what stuff is going on in your mind right now. This should be destabilizing for everybody. You can never get back to your childhood, I'm sorry to say. You can never be sure that anything you remember about childhood is accurate. No doomsday scenarios, but that's not a very happy thought, is it? So, I was told that I should think about what my field is going to look like 25 years from now. I have no idea. That's a long time. I bet you we'll get better at understanding how the brain relates to learning processes, memory processes. We'll probably get better at refining our understanding of the things that actually lead to better remembering versus don't. But I think the most dramatic, from now till 25 years from now, I think that the most dramatic influence that my field should have, so this is fantasy, pure fantasy, is in the application of principles of memory. The principles I've told you about distinctiveness, that if you're going to remember anything for any long amount of time, you have to somehow make it distinctive for you. You have to think as deeply and as engaged about that information as you possibly can. Memory is fallible. What you remember isn't exactly what happened. There's errors chocked full of anything you remember about the past. These are ideas that memory researchers know, consider them laws of nature, but the broader society hasn't really accepted them in a big way. They haven't pervaded the culture. They must, though, in order for us to understand how to make good progress. Everything, as I said, everything relies on learning, and the experiences that you give people provide them with skills and knowledge. Sustainability that Dr. Wang was talking about relies on these mechanisms. So knowing how memory works is essential to meeting the challenges of the next 25 years is going to require these ideas and what we know about how learning works. They have to pervade throughout the culture rather than just being something that people like me, memory researchers, talk about. So the couple of principles that I've identified, how could they change the world? Well, here's the first one. If you're going to remember anything, it's going to depend on how actively you make the thoughts about that information or about whatever skill that you're going to acquire. How well do you make it distinctive? Okay? Skill learning, learning anything that you have to remember for the future, that you want to get good at, requires engagement, active thought processes. And so the implication of that then is that any of us that wants to acquire skill or knowledge, that's equivalent to the processes that a person engages in. There's nothing different from what a person does in the act of learning, reading a textbook, thinking about the concepts, going through the process of becoming a good golfer or really good at diagnosing illness, if you're a medical doctor, for example. It's those processes that are equivalent to the learning process. And it's the richer those experiences are that determine the success, how successful learning is, how robust it is across time, and how quickly people pick up the skills that they want to pick up. Well, it occurs to me that the education system isn't necessarily designed to apply this principle. I remember kindergarten, and I watched my daughter go through kindergarten, and think about all of the things these kindergarten kids are asked to do. They're going to go play in the sand, they're going to run around the playground collecting leaves, they're going to get messy painting things. Bring the student that in kindergarten, the fairly primitive thought processes of a kindergarten child. Now we're all sophisticated adults, and what are we doing to learn? That girl on the right-hand side captures it pretty well, although I would never have such a bored look in one of my classes. Obviously. So my suggestion is that if the next 20 years does anything in a positive way to apply what I know to be true about memory, it'll bring this kind of thing into the lectures. Not the lectures, maybe. Maybe lecturing is even the bad strategy to begin with. Maybe a complete rethinking of how the learning process should occur at every level. Forget about kindergarten, but at every level. And then you start thinking about the fact that what a person's able to do depends on what they've done before and how distinctive those experiences are. And then you think about the type of disciplines that are carved within a university or any other school: history, English, etc., etc. The types of majors you can choose. That's all really good. And the people here are smart people, and they know a lot, and you're going to learn a lot here. But could we do better? Because one thing I know about memory is that it's not subtle. If you want to acquire a skill, you better do it deliberately, and you better practice the skills that you want to acquire if you expect to get good at them. It doesn't happen just through incidentally making contact with smart people that know a lot about history or English or psychology. That's not how the real skills that a person wants to acquire, that's not the most efficient way. The most efficient way is to deliberate target learning those skills. And so just think about how you could do a university or a high school or anything. Forget history, English, psychology, math. What are the skills that employers want? People that know how to learn, people that know how to solve problems, ethical people, people that can deal with other people, right? People that are self-motivated. Why wouldn't education be deliberately targeting those kinds of skills and giving people the practice in developing them? So that's what I hope happens in 25 years. Here's another principle. Remembering is inaccurate. Not only what you remember about your life is inaccurate, but all of your perceptions are prone to error too. Everything you think could be wrong. Let's be more positive than that. Anything you think could be wrong, no matter how confident you are that you're right. We managed to, not me personally, but the people that did that balloon ride experiment had convinced the students that participated that they were there, that they were in that hot air balloon. You can be so confident that you're right and just be horribly wrong, and that's something that memory research, the memory research that I know about, can demonstrate time and time again. People make decisions based on faulty information. The judgments people make are prone to error. Errors run through us as human beings, even the best of us. Knowing that, I hope application of this principle gets pervasive. Appreciating just how flawed we all are, even when we're so confident, should give us all such humility about what we think and believe to be true, that maybe we'll be a little bit more patient with other people and how wrong they can be. I think this is important. I think it's central for the world dealing with Dr. Wang's issues, scary projections for the future as far as climate change. But let's face it, us humans have been at war in different parts of the globe forever. War has been a constant. How is that going to get resolved? Well, realizing that we're all just running with faulty mental machinery should give us a little bit more patience and a little bit more understanding when we're in disagreements with people that have another perspective. And I think that it's that idea applied pervasively across a culture that is a necessary prerequisite for something that I think we should all be shooting for. Why not go nuts in our goals? As I said, I have no idea what 25 years, what's going to happen. I can make this a complete fantasy that if this idea of our inherent error proneness pervades everywhere, then maybe that's what's necessary before anything like peace can be achieved across the globe. So there I go, memory to world peace. Ha! And that's it. Absolutely. Yeah.
In your opinion, why is memory faulty?
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that, probably. Since we're biological organisms, there's noise in the system. Necessarily, there's just flaws inherent in all of us just because we're these messy biological creatures, right? But as far as memory goes, the reason why I think errors occur in remembering is because memory wasn't initially designed for thinking about the past in a conscious way. Memory is for allowing us to know what to do in the present. It's where all of our skills are held that guide behavior. And because memory was never really designed to give you a nice history of your life, it was really designed for behavior. I think that's why these errors are allowed to occur in the system. Yeah.
There's like I've heard before that like taste and scent is tied to memory, like chewing a piece of gum. But I've heard that if you like chew a piece of gum, if you go into a math class, every time you go into a math class, you chew that taste of gum.
Yeah.
Is that true? But based on what your slide is just showing, like kind of counteracts that idea.
That's another principle that I would have mentioned if I had time, is that remembering works best if there's a similarity between what's gone on before and what's going on right now. So taste, as a strategy for doing well on a test, I wouldn't say it would give you a huge bump in terms of your performance. You probably wouldn't be as large as a letter grade. But I bet you would be slightly better if you're chewing the same gum as you were when you were studying the material, for example. Because these match effects do occur. I mean, it's no secret that if you want a person to remember more details about a crime scene, let's say, a crime that they witnessed, then go bring them back to that location and have them use whatever's in that environment to try to cue their memory for the event. So gum is probably not the best source of cue as far as bringing to mind math knowledge, but you've isolated a factor that is important there. Yeah.
You have a person that's set in their ways which you think is on faulty memory. Is there a strategy to change them?
So, sorry.
Is there a strategy to change them?
To change their bad habits. One of the problems with memory, one of the reasons why we're so error prone is that our experience guides us. So what we've done before is a strong influence on what we're going to do in the future. And addiction is an example of this. A person just has this well-learned response to consume alcohol whenever they feel a certain way, for example. Getting a person to change, is that sort of getting a person to change a bad habit? What would you do as a strategy?
No, we're changing their thoughts. They're on one screen. You want them to go on another screen.
Yeah. I think I think hitting them with drama, that helps. The distinctiveness of the event carries more weight than a sort of regular type of event, as I mentioned with my mouse experience, right? I'll never be the same. Okay, so if you wanted to change the way a person thinks, it would have to be a sort of a dramatic strategy like that. Other than that, the truth is people are quite hard to convince, because you might have all their life experience against you in your one circumstance, trying to change all of that. It would have to be quite dramatic. Yeah. Yeah.
So if the goal is to try and remember and do well in life, would you say that doing Facebook, watching cable TV, listening to your iPod while studying for your math exam would help or hinder the results of the exam?
This is a horrible idea. You certainly don't want to try to multitask, because we're all memories error prone. But here's another sad truth about us. We can't really do much all at once. We're really quite limited in terms of the capacities that we can handle all at one time. So no, it's not a good idea to be texting while you're trying to study and watching TV and listening to the iPod. But here, wait, interesting. You'd rather be on the iPod listening, no, forgive me if my terminology is wrong. You'd rather be texting than reading your textbook? Well, how can we change that? Somehow the acts of texting and all of the stuff people are doing online, all of the engagement a person is experiencing online, maybe a strategy would be to bring the textbook into that environment as opposed to turn off these technologies and force the person's nose into a textbook, just as a...
I teach an online class. The only thing you can't do is make them turn the computer on to get started. But if they do turn on, then they're
Okay, okay. Any other questions? Yeah?
For some people, the distinctiveness of an event is dependent on the sense that's being stimulated. Like they talk about something being visual. Is there any truth to the fact that people who are visual and the distinctiveness of the event depends on the visual stimulation?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think that the sensory modality that a person is most comfortable with varies from one person to the next. Some people are quite auditory and verbal or musical, for example, and other people are quite more interested in visual information. So there's no doubt that to me, that varies from one person to the next, yeah.
Okay, borrowing from my area of study, which is medicine, I sense hypoglycemia. So at this point, I want to ask you to thank the unforgettable Jason Leboe.